I watched her documentary before she ever became big. I think I seen on PBS on Channel 13. You can tell she was a rough. She had anger problems. She was not ladylike. She was nigga boy, tomboy. Nah, and she, nigga, she went through the process and corrected what needed to be corrected to represent what a champ is. She ain't no Layla Ali. None of our new youth are what our old stars used to be. They got their own mind, they got their own identity. So nah, man, homie, they picking on Claressa. And can't nobody whoop her. So
when Charles White finally spoke, he didn't yell, rant, or chase attention. Instead, he did something far more dangerous, exposed what many believe had been hiding in plain sight. The silence that people once viewed as loyalty suddenly felt different. Almost like a confession no one saw coming. For years, the public was sold a flawless story. Claressa's shields dominated in the ring while Papoose stayed steady in his lane. Together, they looked like the perfect power couple love story surrounded by fame, success, and applause. But then Charleston White asked the question nobody else dared to ask. What if this was never really about love? What if it was always about strategy, image, and positioning? What if the life presented to the public was built more on optics than genuine emotion? And Charleston didn't come with insults or personal attacks. He simply connected the dots. He reminded everyone that Claressa's shields wasn't always polished. She was once raw, outspoken, and completely unfiltered. Over time, she evolved into more than just a champion fighter. She became a brand. And according to this perspective, that brand couldn't afford chaos. It couldn't welcome difficult questions. It had to be protected at all costs.
So Claressa Shield wants to have babies with Papoose while he's still married to Remy.
they gonna look like African kids, Ugandan babies. Yeah. They ain't gonna know if them babies Nigerian, Jamaican, or Haitian. But they gonna have some pretty chocolate skin. And don't know if their hair gonna be too straight or wavy. They may have African hair. But they sure gonna be nigga kids. Yeah. They gonna be some smart kids that know how to fight.
And that's where the story takes a darker turn. While the camera stayed focused on Claressa's victories in the ring, Charleston White suggested that other forces were quietly operating behind the scenes: money, influence, control, and power. And right in the middle of it all was Papoose. Not just as a partner, but as a gatekeeper. According to Charleston's perspective, Papoose's silence wasn't accidental. It appeared strategic. Charleston didn't throw accusations or point fingers. Instead, he let the pattern speak for itself. He let the silence do the talking. And once that pattern was revealed, the relationship so many people celebrated began to look different. To some critics, it seemed less like a romance and more like a carefully calculated arrangement. Because, as Charleston framed it, real love doesn't need control. It doesn't need silence. And it shouldn't feel like a business deal with an expiration date. That's why Claressa openly talking about having children with Papoose, while he was still legally married, raised even more questions. From Charleston's point of view, it looked less like romance and more like strategic positioning. Even the way he discussed the future children they planned to have and the legacy they would carry painted a picture that felt carefully constructed rather than deeply emotional. What made Charleston White's words hit so hard wasn't drama or volume. It was the precision, the calm delivery, the feeling that perhaps people had been overlooking certain details all along. He wasn't ranting. He was reframing the entire narrative.
Yeah, that nigga Papoose. And this is why I say that. You ain't never heard no hoe come out and say nothing bad about him for her. Even when this hoe was doing wrong, he wasn't running to the internet bashing her. And he don't speak much. He's a man of silence, so that means his words are important to him. I done seen him get with two women. It seemed like he brought the best out of both women. Yeah, I don't know too many niggas that gonna hold their girl down when they go to jail.
Suddenly, The entire story surrounding Claressa Shields and Papoose started to unravel. Charleston White never questioned Claressa's talent. Instead, he questioned the system built around it. He argued that her rise wasn't based on discipline and skill alone. According to Charleston, it also involved protection, image management, and narrative control. The public saw a champion. What many didn't see, he suggested, was how carefully everything around her was managed. Then Charleston shifted his focus to Papoose, not as a romantic figure, but as a stabilizing force in the public narrative. Always quiet, always present, rarely confrontational, yet constantly in the picture. From Charleston's perspective, silence wasn't accidental, it was part of the strategy, filtering criticism before it ever reached Claressa. And that's when the relationship began to look less like love and more like alignment. Charleston explained that this dynamic wasn't emotional, it was functional. In his view, Claressa gained stability, credibility, and protection, while Papoose gained visibility, relevance, and influence. Together, they didn't just appear strong, they appeared safe. And in an industry driven by appearances, safety can be a valuable currency. Then Remy Ma entered the conversation. Charleston framed her absence not as coincidence, but as incompatibility with control. According to his perspective, she challenged narratives instead of protecting them.
She also makes more money than him, similar to Remy Ma. So would you consider him a gold digger?
No. A player ain't never been a gold digger. That nigga's a player. Nigga, that smooth player, nigga. Now, man, now, you always supposed to play for the bank. My grandmama told me, if a woman really like you, it ain't nothing she won't do for you. Well, grandmama, how you know if she really like you? She'll give you her money.
According to Charleston White, Remy Ma never seemed like someone who could comfortably exist inside a system built on silence. In his view, she was too outspoken, too unpredictable, and too willing to challenge the narrative. And when a system can't control a variable, Charleston suggested, that variable often gets pushed aside. Charleston wasn't accusing anyone of secretly plotting behind the scenes. Instead, he focused on what he believed were undeniable patterns. He talked about how some voices get amplified while others slowly disappear, how certain people remain in the spotlight while others are quietly moved out of the frame. To him, usefulness determines visibility. From that perspective, Claressa Shields wasn't just a champion boxer. She had become something much bigger, a brand, a public image, an asset that required constant protection. Then Charleston turned his attention to Papoose's silence. Why was he almost never the first to respond when controversy erupted? Why did he rarely lash out publicly? Charleston argued that silence shouldn't automatically be interpreted as morality. In his eyes, silence represented discipline, strategy, and above all, control. Because silence doesn't always mean nothing happened. Sometimes it means the narrative is being managed. Charleston suggested that carefully controlled exposure shaped much of what the public believed about this relationship. He argued that when Claressa needed stability and Papoose needed greater access and visibility, their interests naturally aligned. The public called it love because, as Charleston implied, love sounds far better than strategy. He went even further, claiming that Claressa's world no longer revolved solely around boxing. According to him, the focus had shifted toward optics, preservation, and image protection. And in a carefully curated environment like that, difficult questions aren't always welcomed. Instead, the people asking those questions can become threats to the larger system. Charleston also argued that the industry itself helped reinforce those narratives. He pointed out that many voices claiming to support empowerment remained silent whenever serious scrutiny emerged. Media platforms continued repeating familiar, comfortable storylines, while criticism was frequently dismissed as jealousy, bitterness, or hate. To Charleston, silence on that scale didn't look accidental. It looked coordinated. And once you begin noticing those patterns, he argued, they're difficult to ignore. According to Charleston, control rarely announces itself openly. It doesn't walk into the room and introduce itself. Instead, it disguises itself as loyalty, as protection, as support, sometimes even as love. What made this part so unsettling for many viewers wasn't necessarily what Charleston said. It was how suddenly his perspective seemed to connect pieces people had never linked before. By this stage, the conversation had moved beyond personalities. It wasn't simply about Claressa or Papoose anymore. It had become a discussion about systems, about what happens when fame, money, influence, and power collide. Charleston described the relationship not as chaotic, but as efficient. And in his view, efficiency is rarely romantic. Efficiency is calculated. It reduces risk. It protects investments. It maximizes outcomes. Charleston argued that when one person influences access to media, criticism, and public narratives, they also influence reality itself not through force, but through filtration. What stories reach the audience? Which ones get reframed? Which ones never see daylight? To outsiders, that may simply look like support. But according to Charleston, it can also create a highly curated environment, fewer unscripted moments, fewer uncomfortable questions, and more protection presented as loyalty. In that kind of environment, Charleston suggested, love doesn't disappear. It evolves into something else. It becomes leverage, stability, insurance. He also addressed money, insisting that his argument wasn't about greed. Charleston specifically rejected reducing Papoose to a simple gold digger narrative. Instead, he focused on structure and influence. To him, unrestricted access to resources says more about alignment than ownership ever could. Influence replaces authority. Proximity replaces control. And silence becomes currency. Loud voices may attract attention, Charleston argued, but quiet voices often hold the most power. Finally, he brought Remy Ma back into the discussion not as drama, but as disruption. In Charleston's view, Remy represented unpredictability. She speaks openly. She challenges narratives. She doesn't sanitize conflict. And systems built around consistency rarely welcome unpredictability. That's when, according to Charleston, the relationship begins to look less emotional and more procedural. He insisted that this wasn't gossip. It was a conversation about power, branding, influence, and survival in the public eye. Because industries benefit from clean narratives. Controlled stories are easier to market, easier to defend, and easier to sell. And perhaps Charleston's most chilling point was this: relationships built primarily on utility rarely collapse in spectacular fashion. They simply fade, quietly. As value shifts, protection weakens, and old roles become unnecessary, cracks eventually appear. Truth emerges slowly through contradictions, leaks, and unanswered questions. Ultimately, Charleston framed the Claressa Shields and Papoose story not as heroes versus villains, but as a lesson in power, dependence, influence, and image management. And according to his perspective, silence didn't protect people.